expert. Okay, so we are recording it as. So we have here 3 energy experts from the US who will share with us their experience and insight as to the grid failures in Texas, Puerto Rico, and California. First, I would like to thank Gary, Terry, and Ranger for your participation in these somewhat peculiar hours at your place, probably. Dr. Ehud Ganani will chair the meeting and introduce the speakers. Please use the chat for any questions and please make it short. So thank you, and Udi, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Amos, for hosting EIS Council and our partners in the US. Indeed, it's an opportunity for us now when we are dealing with an emergency case which encompasses every part of our life to look at some examples, as you asked, Amos, for disastrous situations that impact the grids. For good housekeeping, every speaker will assume control of his screen, try to stay within the 10 to 12 minutes. That would allow Amos to watch the chat and leave some time for a Q&A session. So EIS Council is, oh, no, that's not the one, sorry. Sorry, that's not the one. Let me try another one. Yeah. Okay. Share screen. Okay. EIS stands for Electric Infrastructure Security Council. This is an NGO that was established 14 years ago by Avi Shnur as a result of congressmen in the US and parliament members in the UK being extremely concerned about the dependency of everything that we do in life upon the grid. And the grid is exposed to a number of threats. And at that time, 14 years ago, the threat that was relatively not properly addressed were the electromagnetic threat in way of an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, or even GMD, geomagnetic disturbances. Over the years, I think that several changes that the organization went through, and I think it's true to say today that the S and the EIS can easily be replaced by 2 R's, resilient, renewable. Looking like most of the people in the audience today were very, very concerned about the grid changing into a greener grid, and what's the implication on the resilience of such a grid. I will briefly introduce our speakers. Terry Boston. Terry is a trailblazer in the energy sector. He's a former CEO of PJM and the 2017 National Infrastructure Advisory Council appointee. Terry's influence extends globally. He was the 130th president of the Association of Edison Illuminating Companies and the past president of GO15, and he is a key player among most of the world's largest power operators. Terry's accolades include International Leadership Awards for Renewable Integration and the Platts Global Energy Lifetime Achievement Award. He serves on multiple boards. Terry led the NIAC team that investigated the Texas freeze, and he's going to talk to us about what happened and the recommendations of the team. Our next speaker is going to be Gary Fernandez. Gary is a Puerto Rico native with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. His journey with PREPA started in 1995, and he rose to become the system operations manager by 2017. In 2020, Luma Energy took charge and Gary became project directors overseeing major projects. Fast forwarding to 2023, Gary is the System Operations, Energy Management and Transition Operations Center Director, ensuring stability and reliability in Puerto Rico electric system. Last but not least is my colleague Ranger Dawn, who is the exercise coordinator for the EIS Council. Ranger is running our impactful exercises like EarthX and the Black Sky series of exercises, and his expertise extends to evaluating state responses to national level exercises. Ranger lives in Nevada and will speak today about wildfires in California. The term black sky is the term that we're using to describe long duration over a very, very large piece of property, being that a country or a continent. By long duration, we're not talking about the 72 hours, which is embedded in most of the resilience exercises or the requirements. We're talking about major events that will cause the grid to go out for weeks and months. And the causes for such a black sky situation are quite a few, starting with malicious threats such as very significant cyber attack or war, being that conventional or nuclear, supported by malicious countries or by mega terrorism. However, nature can cause much more damage, as we're going to see in the upcoming presentations. Extreme solar storms, mega earthquakes, which in our area, according to predictions, is already long overdue. Climate changes and the pandemic. I mean, the example that we had here 3 years ago was very, very limited in terms of morbidity, and that can get really, really ugly. I'm not going to go through more than just pointing out that 7 years ago, EIS Council shifted from just preaching and scaring executives, both in government and corporations, and came up with suggested 5 very needed tools in order to prepare for black sky. First one being communication. I mean, I'm not going to elaborate on that. No communication, no situation awareness. You can't assess what needs to be done, and you can't convey, the decision makers cannot convey instructions or guidance in order to come up, to bring the grid back up. We teamed up with Rafael. We're using the BNet radio system with a 35 years legacy, and it's already installed in one of the major operators in the US, who is responsible for providing electricity to Washington, DC. The second system that we are in the, I would say, initial development stages is a chaos management AI-based system, which is going to imagine multi-dimensional ways that will provide you with recommendations, what steps need to be taken in order to bring the grid back up. Thank you, Gideon, and congratulations on your next chapter in life. We are partially supported by the chief scientist of the Ministry of Energy, and we're working closely with NOGA in order to incorporate that software tool in their upcoming yearly exercise in 2025. The third one caters to most of the people sitting today in the audience, and that's as many storage capabilities as possible spread across the grid. That's going to provide an enormous level of resilience, and that's going to take care of the immediate needs of every facility if you've got stored energy in place. EIS Council is an NGO. We're doing research, and we're publishing about once every other year a handbook with very practical recommendations. If you haven't seen any of our handbooks, I suggest that you log in onto our website, become members. It's free, and then you'll have access to our entire library. The next handbook, which hopefully will be released next year, middle of next year. The title is Black Start Restoration for a Greener Grid. Black starting a green grid is much, much different than black starting the conventional grid, if I may use that non-professional term. We've done a great deal of research and interviews with operators, and I hope that handbook is going to be helpful for grid operators. And the last one is obviously training. I mean, we have to realize the fact that black sky is going to last more than 72 hours. We need to prepare for that. We need to have the playbooks. We need to have the exercises, because if we don't, and we're going to be facing a black sky situation, that's going to be too late. That's my hopefully brief. I mean, it's longer than I thought, but that's my introduction. And Terry, the floor is yours. If you can share your screen and share with us your thoughts.
You may have to make me presenter to do that.
You are a presenter, or yeah. I mean, if I could share mine, I mean, you can do yours as well. Here you are.
Okay, I'm almost there.
Yep.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Texas was the most expensive blackout. We've had bigger blackouts, but the numbers and the fatalities in Texas were very big. So I titled my presentation, "The Future Ain't What It Used to Be," and it's driven in part by the changes that we're seeing on the grid. To humble us and make sure the importance of what EIS is doing worldwide, I wanted to make a point on the importance of electricity. When the National Academy of Engineering, which I'm a proud member, was told to put together a list of the top engineering accomplishments of the last century, the grid and electrification was number one. You look at some important things like refrigeration, water distribution systems. As a matter of fact, 6 of the remaining 9 are powered by electricity, and we are working hard on automobiles. And I presented at NASA here about a month ago the electrification of regional flight. So mobility in general is moving. So nothing has improved our standard of living more. Nothing has improved our productivity more than electrification. So I want to use an example following what happened in New York City during Superstorm Sandy 2014. I was down at Philadelphia at the time, but it looks a little like some parts of India in terms of the running of cables, et cetera, but we got Wall Street up and running. But I want to focus on this guy. He's found a niche market. He can actually charge cell phones by eating pizza and using this bicycle. Now, he's not a very efficient machine. I looked at the process of converting pizza to calories to energy, and he would be a 18,000 BTU per kilowatt hour machine. But he can charge about 4 iPhones with one slice of pizza, and he was actually making a pretty good income by charging iPhones during Sandy. The emphasis, though, is that if you wanted this to power your 3,000 square foot home, you would need something like 40 of these, and the pizza boxes would not be exceptional to the neighbors. So electricity is a blessing to all of us. Power engineering is not rocket science. It is much more important than that. As we will show in Texas, the economy shuts down, the loss of life is getting larger and larger with each major outage that we have across the systems. This is a brief history of outages starting in 1965 over in New York City. There was another one in 2011 that hit New York pretty hard. 1996, there were two major blackouts out west involving 14 states. Texas has had two, I colored it gray because they weren't total system outages. And Florida has had several times they've separated from the system, not recently, but the worst being on February 26, 2008. We actually had generators in Manitoba Hydro swinging against Miami when a fault stayed on the system for 88 seconds. I said seconds, not cycles. So we have had some experience with blackouts. And some of them, as Udi had mentioned, black sky events. We've had some. Probably one that surprised me most was derechos. Derechos are straight line winds, normally across land, not like the Puerto Rico hurricane that we're going to talk about, but the things that we haven't had major events are across the bottom. They're a major cyber event, an EMP threat, and even a solar storm comparable to the 1859 Carringer event. So let's take a look at what we need to protect. These are the substations in North America that we need to protect. Does anybody see a problem there? It's pretty massive. Most of the people in policy don't understand how massive the power system is, how many miles of line, what exposure we have to both weather and other causes of outages. Let's move to Texas. This curve is a little hard to read, so let me walk you through it. The gray area are the forced outages on the gas fleet as the winter storm moved through. The blue area is the forced outages on the wind air, and the wind was dominant in a sense. There's a lot of capacity, but not a lot of capacity was dependent on that day. And coal and nuclear both had outages. So this was a $90 billion 3-4 day period. Of that, almost $50 billion was tied to electricity, and around 246 deaths were attributed to this single storm. So policies are very important. In the case of Texas, there's no capacity market. There's no requirements that you have to be there. And there was no penalties for no-shows on that day in terms of generating capacity. A lot of that is being reviewed. Winterization of the gas fleet is a big deal. Dry air, even if it's compressed to 4,000 psi, is not dry, and it will freeze without proper trace heating in the gas fleet. And in this case, we had considerable freezing of natural gas at the wellhead, including the wellhead, all the way to the gas drying plants where there's still water in the natural gas system. This is another way to look at the forced outages that occurred during that winter storm. And as I said, the wind was not counted on in terms of having a tremendous amount of contribution to the energy system that day. This was the difference in the forecasted wind and what they actually had. So we lost some wind, but it was not nearly as serious uh, of a failure to operate as the natural gas system. And many of these natural gas plants were brand new, shiny combined cycle plants. Now, if you look at wind in terms of total capacity instead of forecasted capacity in the day, the performance is not nearly as well. And we in the industry have been pushing for some time that you've got to have storage to go with wind and solar. And there's a lot of batteries going in now in California and Texas as we have kind of woken up to the fact that fast ramping and in the case of wind, you can have several days without any wind in a weather event. So if you look at the operating reserves, total resources, and compare it to the peak demand, you can see there was over 20,000 megawatts that had to go into rotating outages. And because of coal load pickup and other things, a lot of that load could not come back on. So instead of rotating outages, they had multi-day outages. And we literally had some people with hypothermia that were in their beds, children that didn't survive the event. So ice storms and cold weather. I got quoted at TVA here recently. In the case of North America, there is a little bit of limit on how hot it can be. Most I've ever seen in my 35 years at TVA was about 7 degrees above normal. I have seen a minus 24 degrees. I've seen it being 20 to 30 degrees below normal on a cold winter day. So surviving ice storms is something we need to focus on as an industry, especially because the loss of life potential is fairly great. Normally, we think of the bottom pictures on this, the cold weather and ice causing problems on distribution and transmission. In the case of Texas, it was much more on the generation side, and I didn't have a way to depict a gas system, so I used those iron mules there, showing the gas coming out with the oil. I have had the opportunity to work some major storms in my career. My first one is over on the left. I actually took that picture in 1983. I turned to James Mundy, who was climbing the tower to get the overhead static wire de-iced so we could bring the line back on. The static wire had sagged all the way into the conductor. I turned to James and I said, "Have you ever climbed that tower that bad before?" And he says, "Yes, once." And I didn't like it then either. He put on his clothes and went right up the structure, and we restored the power that day. The one on the right was the worst ice storm one in the center is the worst ice storm that I ever worked. It was in Mississippi. It actually went all the way up into Pennsylvania, but we had 3-inch of radial ice. Each conductor was about 6 inches in diameter, and that's a crew changing, changing the fuse. And when they closed in on that, interestingly enough, they closed in, and that is not electricity. That is hot metal from the fuse exploding. And to catch that on a flash photo was phenomenal. And by the way, there are 2 linemen in that bucket truck. One is faster than the other. He ducked much deeper into the bucket. Now, on the right is the worst ice storm we've ever had. This was up in Quebec. The 765 lines cascaded and failed. So winter storms, you need to think very seriously about water, lights, heat, radios, batteries, and all the communication that you need to know what's going on out there to protect your family. you should never compromise your family safety. I actually have a microgrid in my home that has 10 critical circuits powered by batteries. And Udi, you'd be proud they are EMP hardened to 150 kV per meter squared on the inverter system that's there. So you can't power everything, but critical life support systems you can. I want to close where I began. If you think about the importance of electricity, this was carved in stone in 1908 on Union Station just outside of the Capitol in the U.S. Electricity, carrier of light and power, divider of time and space, bearer of human speech over land and sea, greatest servant of man. Nothing has improved our productivity more. Nothing has improved our standard of living more than electrification. And we have to protect that system, even during the extreme black sky events that EIS has worked on. And thank Chris and Udi for inviting me to speak here, and I look forward to questions.
Terry, we need to ask you to stop sharing, and that would allow Gary, our next speaker, to share his screen.
I am trying.
You gotta try upwards where it says stop sharing. It should be red.
I got it.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
No problem, Gary, you're on.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Great to be here. Hope you can see my presentation. So going right through it, let me, from what I saw on what we're going to talk on this meeting, wanted to give you some background because the basis of the situation that the island is basically living right now is all related to history. 1947, PREPA was founded, and that was a public corporation in the island. It had it was good at some time there in starting including generation, and the grid was expanded at a point that basically you can see on the diagram. Then at some time in the last 20 some years, that management started decreasing. We lost a lot of employees by 2014, almost 1,000 employees because of a law that was implemented on the island. And I would say that was one of the starting points of how the system was so badly managed that we're in a situation right now that is complicated running the system every day. And basically that's my work every single day with my team, trying to maintain the available generation that we have on the island and the transmission system up to speed to be able to obviously serve our customers. In that process, obviously, we got Ecoelectrica and AES by the year 2000 that were incorporated. That was the first two companies that connected a generation to the island without being part of PREPA at that time. We're talking each one is around 500 megawatts, so we're talking an additional 1,000 megawatts on the island by year 2000 on the south part of the island. A very important part of our system. Basically, we have 70% of our generation on the south part, but the major demand on the island is on the metro area and on the north part of the island. So basically, 70% of generation on the south, 70% of load on the on the north area. So that means that that transmission system is one of the most important parts of our grid. Part of Luma's work right now is to be able not to reconstruct that grid, but is go into a resiliency stage, see what we can add to make it really redundant and resilient. We understand that the current system is very limited on that aspect, and obviously we saw that with the last couple of years with all the weather events that we had on the islands. By 2012, we started incorporating also the first systems, one solar, two wind on the island. Those were the first utility scale renewable systems that were connected on the island by that year. Obviously, we're getting that generation being incorporated in the island, but still the system was poorly managed. By I would say basically the last couple of years before the first change with Luma entering in June 2021, the maintenance of the transmission breakers, transformers, and even the distribution transformers was around 5% per year for those equipment. So you can see the necessity of the island to be able to change the way they're doing things, managing a utility for the whole island. So that's when Luma Energy comes in June 2021. Government run a private-public partnership with Luma. Is a consortium between ATCO and Quanta, and they're running not only the system operations, but also the T&D grid and the customer service part. Then basically 2 years later, they did the same with the fossil part of the public generation that is connected on the island. You have Genera PR. That's a consortium between New Fortress Energy, Black and Beach, and Peak Energy. And they're running what I would say is left from the generation fossil fleet right now on the island. There's a lot of talk about moving the island. There's some laws pushing to have 100% renewable by 2050. That's in a very slow process. Obviously, that's public information that is being sent to the customers. As a utility, we understand that's obviously right now with the current technology, that's not possible, but still, we want to start incorporating utility scale systems to the island to be able to take advantage of that renewal process, and during the process, obviously see how solar start to, let's say, bother us in our operation, and start incorporating batteries, storage systems in the island. At utility scale, we still don't have battery systems connected. And recently we had some DRs through a VPP, be able to incorporate 2 megawatts at peak time. We're still working with that. So we still, I say we still in diapers in a lot of stages on the utility business. But with Genera and Luma running things now, I think we will be able to get into that stage. So all of that difficulties basically put us with the situation that we have right now: poor infrastructure, poor reliability, telecom system. We had a lot of situations related to that. Not enough. Even the backbone have given some difficulties. In some occasions, we had half of the island losing our RTUs to be able to manage the system. So we're confronting situations basically every day. Right now, we're in the stage of getting a new EMS system. Luma is purchasing OSI system to be incorporated. We expect to have that in commissioned and in service by beginning of year 2025. And also part of the process that Luma started just from the beginning is the development and design and construction of 2 new control centers. The primary one is going to be very near the one that we have right now. And that expected construction should be started by mid next year and should be in sometime during 2026. As you see on the presentation, we have a lot of equipment that still is out, not only because of maintenance, but also a lot of equipment that was damaged during Hurricane Maria still hasn't been restored. And also we confront basically situations in every aspect of related to the grid and the utility business. To give you some perspective of how difficult is our work, this is 2022. The orange line is the availability that we have on generation for that period, basically a year, from this October 2021 to October 2022. You see that we basically at the lowest part of the year, when we have the lowest demand, that's on between January and April. That's what we get more availability. We're talking around 3,500 megawatts. But when we get into the high season, the hot season, that margin tends to be very difficult, and you will see how that orange line hits quite a few times that blue area. That's the demand that we have on the island. So you can see we have a very stretched operation continuously, and I would say I'm obviously on my side, I continues to be worried about the situation, because it's tending to be more that margin tends to be lower. Right now, maybe this year we have hit sometimes availability around 3,200 megawatts, and we had a peak demand this year of basically that amount. That day, if I'm not mistaken, we basically passed the peak time just barely. Almost no reserve online and offline because of the difficulty to maintain availability on the system. And in this specific graph for 2022, you can see 2 events. You will see we went to blackout on two times on 2022. On the one on April is related to a breaker failure in Costa Sur, in the southwest side of the island. It caused such a major disturbance in the system that it collapsed completely. We took a couple of days to be able to put the system back on service. And later that year, during Hurricane Fiona, also we had the same situation. So 2022 was a very complicated year for us, considering we had to manage 2 blackouts, complete blackouts during the year. On the one related to Fiona, I'm presenting basically the not only the blackout event that we had, but also the process of being able to start up the system, the difficulties to be able to put generation online during the startup process. And obviously you start to, as you put that, you can increase your demand and put customers on service. Obviously at some point, basically midway of the process, then the process is more on the Luma side, trying to obviously to restore all the possible deficiencies that we have on basically on either transmission and mostly on distribution, to be able to get to the customers and completely put the system back in service or restore it. This event took us 20 days to be able to complete it from blackout to 100% customers back in service. And just to complete, one of our analysts during the event was able to basically reconstruct the restoration process on the island. So something that I think we can present quite fast. Puerto Rico, really the main situation that we have every year is related more with weather events, specifically storms. I know this group talks about black sky situations and electromagnetic pulses events and things like that. We are not we haven't had those situations yet. Right now, our worst situations are related all either to weather events. We had also earthquake that caused another blackout during January 2020. So I would say since 2016, we had been having events, either storms or blackouts basically every year until this year. This year, we were not hit by any storm, and we were able to maintain the system stable. Obviously, the major situation right now is being able to have enough generation on the island to maintain the system to serve our customers at the end. But we confronted a lot of manual load sheds during peak time, that basically during nighttime, quite a lot during this current year. That's what I have for today. Available for any questions from the group.
Gary, thank you so much. Very, very informative and a lot of food for thought, because Puerto Rico is an island and Israel is also in a way an energetic island. Just a question, what's the dimensions of the island?
100
length?
miles or 100 miles by 35 miles.
Okay, thank you. If you
And
would be kind enough.
and the number of households in Puerto Rico?
Sorry?
Number of household of customers.
Customers, we're talking almost 1.5 million.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Gary, thank you. We'll get back to you during Q&A. Hopefully,
Perfect.
if you're close. And Ranger, it's all yours. Fires in California.
All right, thank you. Hopefully you can see my deck.
Yep.
And of course the bar is across the top, so I can't find the start button. All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at. My background is in wildfire, and I'm going to walk you through a number of different wildfires that are directly related to the grid as either a start caused by the grid. In this case, the most recent one is Lahaina, Maui. But I want to take you through the background that caused each of these to be the problem that they were. We have in Western U.S. and in Hawaii prolonged drought. So that creates the background conditions, the conducive conditions for wildfires. It's also related to the current conditions that happen in each of these areas. In this case, a hurricane spun off winds. The winds were extremely strong, as you can see by the palm trees blowing in the background. So that combination by itself created the environment for the fire, but the cause is still under investigation. The initial fire that started that day was caused by a down line. It's still being debated whether the end result was. But if we take a look at the I'll call it the impacts. Several lawsuits filed, going to be in the billions of dollars when it's settled. 2,200 buildings, over 100 deaths, number of injuries. This is the downside of having our electric system not as resilient and able to fend off winds and other types of things. Another example, this one is $150 million, the Zog fire in 2021. This one was trees directly contacting distribution systems. We focused on the grid in California and primarily transmission, but the distribution system is also capable of creating fires. This one, 204 buildings, 4 deaths. This resulted in 4 charges of manslaughter against a company, Pacific Gas and Electric, that has already been convicted of over 86 manslaughter charges, felony charges. The Dixie Fire, this one was one of the largest in California history, tree falling on a power line again. 1,300 buildings destroyed. In this case, we really didn't have the deaths, only 1 firefighter, no civilians. But the cost, 13.5 in a civil suit settlement. That power company is responsible for 100% of that. That's PG&E again. The next one, the Camp Fire. This one is considered to be the costliest at the time, 16.65 billion. These are in dollars back when these happened. With inflation, these are much more now. This one also had a 13.5 billion civil settlement and electrical transmission line. Now, this one in particular is of interest because the transmission tower where the line contacted was over 100 years old. The equipment on it was over 100 years old. It had not been changed or maintained. It was just a problem lying in wait that was going to happen. The consequences here were huge. 1,804 buildings destroyed, 18,804. Only 1/3 to be rebuilt. The town has not come back, and 85 deaths. Those were manslaughter convictions. You can see the impacts to the community. The Woolsey Fire. This one is a different company, Southern California Edison. $2.2 billion civil suit settlement, cost of $6 billion. 1,643 buildings, 3 civilians. Yeah, as you can see, the stakes are pretty high in these. Thomas Fire, 1.16 billion. This is Southern California Edison again. These are power lines collided, over 1,000 structures. And at the end of the fire, the fire was still in the wrap-up stages. There was a mudslide in the town of Montecito, California. 100 homes and 23 fatalities, 163 injured. This happened because of all the fire-related materials being washed down quickly due to heavy rains. What all these have in common is the combination of the prolonged extreme drought, the current conditions of heavy winds and a receptive fuel bed, and the start being the power companies. Now, I'm going to point out that had something else started these, there would have been nobody to sue. There wouldn't have been a deep pockets. But because it was the power companies, they were the ones who share 100% of the costs on these. PG&E had to declare bankruptcy. Since then, they are finding ways to defer a lot of these costs back to the public or to the government. And either way, these are huge costs for the taxpayers or the ratepayers. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to talk about what has come about because of this. Well, the first thing in California and extending to other parts of the country, and a key question of the fire in Maui is what we call power safety public shutoffs. This is where the power is turned off when bad weather is predicted. It will be off for anywhere up to days to weeks. And the notice that it's coming, that it'll actually happen, is roughly 24 hours. So there's a little bit of notice in there, but there's no compensation for the public. The most they've done is they've offered up some cooling centers in communities. but you can put 1 million people at a time or more without power for an extended period. And when the weather comes back to back, it can actually run into weeks without power. This is a reaction to the billions of dollars lost. If they shut the power off, they can't cause the fire, but they can cause people that are dependent on power to possibly become fatalities, hospitals without power, so on and so forth. So it's a standoff right now. And a fair disclaimer here, I do work for PG&E and Southern California Edison and San Diego Gas and Electric as a consultant with things that they've been ordered to do to make their systems better, the response in particular. So I do work for the 3 utilities as a consultant. I do train, and I've been there since the start of the public safety power shutoffs and watched it develop. They're doing better now, but as you can see, the areas of impact are, the areas of red are where it is very likely that power will be shut off, and these are populated areas. The other thing is every time there's one of these fires, whether the utility starts it or it's started by any number of other things, men, women, children, lightning, etc., there's going to be problems with the grid. We have smoke caused relays. We have physical damage. Every one of those fires that I referenced in there damaged anywhere between hundreds and thousands of miles of distribution circuits, taking out poles, lines, transformers. There's also the delayed access for restoration. The utility companies can't get into the fire area until it's safe to do so. So even the access to go ahead and in some cases cleaning up the transmission lines to where they can come back up to full power. That can take days to weeks. That's getting people in, hanging from helicopters, scrubbing the lines, any number of other things that have to happen that are delayed until they can get access and get done. The cost of the repairs are substantial, and the lost revenue. If there's no power flowing, the meters are not running. So there's a loss there. And then the ultimate loss is the loss of customers. When you lose 2/3 of the customers in the community, there's not a lot left. The last thing in here is the hazmat from transformers. This is something that, depending on the age of them, different materials, and adds up. I wanted to cover renewables in here. This is an actual picture from under a solar farm. Most of our solar farms in California and Nevada are in remote areas and in dry areas, arid areas. We do have vegetation that grows underneath the panels, and it's very easy to have a wildfire go through. I believe all the wiring can be impacted. You can lose that. You can also lose the panels. I'm not sure what their heat tolerances are, but I'm pretty sure flames from a fire are going to be a problem there. I've taken pictures of a lot of these. A lot of the power for Los Angeles is now coming from these panels. They want to get to 100%. That would mean all of them would have these same vulnerabilities. They get the same winds in the desert that they get other places. I see this as a future vulnerability to pay attention to. We've also seen smoke shading, 15% to 25% smoke shading, depending on how thick it is. The smoke during these fires can last days to weeks, and in the case of the Canadian fires, even up to months. That's if you're depending mostly on solar, you're going to see quite a reduction. As you get ash landing on the panels, you'll also see that as a issue. Wind farm, there's some risk to fires in towers from embers and so on, but not a huge deal. But you may find the high winds damaging the towers and the ground facilities around them. Our hydro, we have a lot of hydro in the western U.S. It's located in wildland areas, and those fires then create debris and sediment, trees that wash down into the systems, and production is cut because of that. That is kind of a quick tour of wildfire impacts on the grid in the western United States and in Hawaii. And as you can see, the ES Council is committed to trying to make things better and find ways to address this. And with that, thank you very much. I will stop sharing now.
Amos, it's all yours. Fire away the first question.
Okay.
What time is left for a very brief Q&A session?
Yeah, okay. So first of all, thank you very much. Very interesting. I think that we learned a lot. I got here some messages that complement the idea of having you on this webinar because we really learned a lot from your experience. Up to now, I see that here I got 3 questions. One is relating to the microgrid. To what extent, from your experience, the microgrid has a role, a positive role in times of in times of disaster? This is one question. Another question is, what are the drawbacks, if any, in implementing a blackout emergency system? And I would like to add one question which relates to the customer. What is the modus operandi in terms of billing customers during blackout? So who is ready to take it or part of it? Any volunteer from the speakers? Well, Terry, what about you about the microgrid?
Yeah, I lost Terry.
Okay.
Terry is not
Not available. Okay.
not with us anymore.
Okay.
I can speak a little bit about the California experience with
Okay,
public
thanks.
safety power shutoffs. The initiation of microgrids, setting these up, has been part of their build out, and it is allowing some small communities to stay with the power when everything is shut off. The switching towards shutting the systems off, the circuits off, has isolated these microgrids and has made them viable when there's no other power. One other thing that has happened in California is with deregulation and the elimination of natural gas as a source as much as possible has taken out a lot of the generation that would have been available near communities, making them more dependent on the renewables and less likely to create a microgrid using those alternate generation systems.
Okay. Anyone has another question? If you can raise your hand. I can't see all of you, but let's see. Well, I think that we are right on time. So before closing, I would like just to point out that yesterday, not relating to the subject of this webinar, but yesterday we have published Energycom report about rehabilitation and development of electricity and energy in the Tkuma area. Tkuma is the southern part of Israel who suffered on October 7th. The report was published to all the relevant decision making, and you can and you have the link. You can see it in our website, so feel free to download, and any comments is welcome. So Udi, thank you for coordinating this webinar. Thank you for the 3 participants. Really, it was very, very important for us. And either it's a good morning or good night or good evening, but thank you very much. Bye. Shalom, shalom.
Bye, Amos. Thank you.